How do you feel when you switch to Geico and save on your car insurance? It's like going to work on one Thursday morning and thinking to yourself, just one more day until Friday. But then somebody in the elevator says, "Happy Friday!" Then you check your phone quickly and discover today's actually Friday. So yes, happy Friday, random stranger in the elevator. Happy Friday indeed. Yep, switching and saving with Geico feels just like that. Get more with Geico.
Welcome to Ask a Therapist, a show where qualified therapists stop by to answer all your questions. Welcome to another season of Ask a Therapist. Another season means another new therapist is going to be answering all your questions. Before I introduce you to the therapist, when it comes to your questions, if you check out the show notes, there is a link to our question form. You can drop your questions there using even a pseudonym and then stay listening for the therapist to answer them. It's as simple as that. Back to the season. So this particular therapist I follow on social media, and he does incredible videos just sharing knowledge on various issues you will encounter in your day-to-day and also on your healing journey. And there's 2 times that I knew we had to have him on our shows. One, he did a series talking about grief, and I felt those gems deep in my heart. Because, man, navigating grief can be something else. The second time is during the protests in Kenya this year. In case you're not from Kenya, we have been having non-stop protests from around June, just trying to agitate for change when it comes to governance and our very incompetent president. Around that time, he shared gems on how we can take care of our mental while agitating for change, or while being exposed to all of these news pieces that can be very heavy because it's a lot of doom and gloom and corruption. His name is Aldo, and in the show notes are his contacts in case while listening to him in this season and in this episode, you want to do one-on-one sessions with him. And now, let's get right into answering all your questions. In this episode, really excited because we've been having Daisy on our Ask a Therapist show, answering all your questions, and now we've switched it up and we have Aldo. So welcome.
Thank you so much.
You are now officially part of our Legally Clueless Africa family.
I feel so welcome.
So maybe we can hear a bit about you before we get into the question in today's episode.
Okay, so my name is Aldo Oluoch Olunya, and I'm a registered counseling psychologist. Psychology has always fascinated me from when I was, let's say, younger, but I didn't know I was going to get into therapy per se until the more I knew, the more I thought to myself that this is the field I want to be in. And so I've been practicing since 2018. I used to be attached with schools. So in the school setting, you get to see a lot of kids. I'd also see the staff. You work with the parents. And then there was a point I was let's call it head of pastoral care, but that's student well-being. So you design programs which are everything which isn't academic, because obviously school isn't just the academia. You want them to do well, but you also have to take care of the other stuff to make sure. And then I would see clients outside of that. And then I moved solely into private practice, which was a jump.
Yeah.
I'm happy that I made it. And I still work closely with schools because I have a lot of friends and colleagues in that space. And mercifully, I've done good work in the past. I'll still go in to talk to the kids, parents, the staff, and do different things.
Oh my goodness. And so why was this like a passion point for you to explore in terms of like career?
I think everybody wants to find the thing that they believe they can do. And for me, when I'm doing my work, there's a sense of, I'll call it fulfillment. And it's a really, really deep sense of it. And there's been so many times when I've been privileged enough to help people. So my thing is that you can help. Like you can genuinely be in a space where there's something going wrong and you can turn somebody onto a better path or to understand something about themselves. And even today, I'm still in awe of it. I sit and I think I'm so lucky. And it's luck I feel. It's like I have this privilege and responsibility, but I'm really lucky to be able to help.
I'm nodding furiously because honestly, when I look at my therapist, and she's been on our shows before, Faith, I'm just like, how do I thank you? Like, my goodness, where you have taken me from, only you know. And I always remember she used to start our sessions as like, there's no judgment. And I really genuinely felt like it was probably the only space in the world that was void of shame. And so the work that you are doing is so important. So we had a couple of questions that were sent in by our Legally Clueless family. Of course, if you're listening and you want to send through your questions, remember there is a question form in the show notes. And so the first one, this is a really good one because many people at this point, I want to start therapy, but I am scared because the first therapist I went to immediately shared that they think I have particular mental health conditions. That is very many people's opinion, maybe fueled by different things, but when it comes to therapy, there's a fear of going to therapy.
What I would say is that when it comes to our mental health, even if you don't identify something, it doesn't mean you don't have to live with it. So the best relation I'd give is, let's say you are physically ill, but you didn't go to the doctor. It doesn't make you less ill. It just means you don't know what you're dealing with. And also, mental illness is not some condemnation. It's if there are these things that are giving you problems, okay, where did they come from? Is it as a result of family? Is it a result of upbringing? All this kind of stuff. What changes can you make? I understand the fear because of the stigma associated with it, but a lot of people are living with mental health issues, and you can see it manifest. And if you manage to identify it, it would be like, okay, now I understand. So the thing I'd say is it's not about the fear, and a diagnosis does not mean that all of a sudden you're defective. It just means that now that you know what's going on, you can counteract it. And if something is going to happen, which is going to affect you in a particular way, now you know what you do. But without that, you can keep stumbling into these things, and it can be very frustrating, and you can feel, I don't know what's wrong. So it kind of helps aim it, and then it gives you the ability to do something about it. So I understand the fear, but when you take away the stigma and sometimes the lens that's used, it can be empowering because now you know.
Actually, it's so funny. I was talking to a friend of mine, like via voice notes, which is just the best way to chat with friends. And they were sharing about a diagnosis that they had that meant that when they were recording the voice note, she was like, oh, at least today's a good day. I'm out of bed and I'm about because of this thing. Some days are really bad and I'm in bed. And I remember I sent her a response and I told her, oh my God, doesn't it feel so freeing once you have a name? And so I feel like everyone should get their names. Last year, September, I got a low functioning depression diagnosis. And in the moment, I literally was like, oh, so I'm dying. I think I've been told. That literally was my response. I was like, so should I get my affairs in order? What are you really telling me here? Which goes to show just how much stigma there is, right? Because I feel like I have a bit of information, but I still was like, oh, I'm going to die. But I got the name. And so I had a depressive episode this year and I didn't panic. Like I was like, oh, this is that thing. Okay, do I have this in my fridge? Do I have ABCD ready? Okay, delegate work. Let people handle more things and just kind of like, let's ride it out.
Yeah.
But work is still getting done and you're still feeding yourself what you've been told is good for you to be eating during this time. Not to minimize anybody else's experience, but for me, this year was much easier on my mind because I was like, oh, this is that thing. Okay, I have to make sure I'm sleeping on time. I have to make sure I'm eating this. I'm, hydrating. My work, I've delegated it. Now I can just be like, let's ride this. So I say all that to just reinforce what you said, Aldo. Is like, maybe it's for all of us to get the name if we have.
Exactly.
Just get it's so freeing once you are like, one, it's not just me. And there's ways to like deal with it and take care of yourself. So what about the people who have a fear of engaging with therapy just because even saying, hey, I have a therapist or I have two, or, these like guys are just like, what's happening? Are you okay? What would you tell people who have stigma from that perspective? They've not interacted with not stigma or fear. They've not interacted with therapy at all.
I'd say, obviously with therapy, it depends on the therapist you see because fit really, really matters. So even if the therapist is really good, that might not be the best therapist for you. But I've seen the conversations shifting and therapy is spoken about not as much behind closed doors. I have a therapist. I get asked a lot, do you have a therapist? I tell people, I could not do this without one. It doesn't make sense that I'm trying to help people move through these things and then I don't have the same for myself. As like almost arrogance isn't the word I want to use. Maybe hubris in terms of I can help others, but then I'm fine. I
Yeah.
have to keep checking. And even though I'm an introspective person, as I grow, I also change. So you go and they help you with your challenges. And the thing about therapy, and even going back to diagnosis for a bit, they change. So even depression, there's severity to it. So if you're doing the work and everything, your depression can improve. And so your diagnosis will shift in a more positive direction because you know what an episode feels like. And you also know the habits you need to do. Maybe the substances you take that you're like, actually, this doesn't agree with me. So I think the beauty of therapy is the more we talk about it, the more accepted it becomes. There's always going to be people who want to poke holes and say, oh, you're going to therapy, we have issues. And to that I say, but we all got problems.
Who doesn't?
Like, are you walking around saying that you don't have problems? We all have issues. I shouldn't be getting ridiculed because I have the courage to deal. Because it takes an immense amount of bravery to go to someone and be like, I want to start this journey. I want to work on this. And so I think it's to be applauded. And the more we have those kind of conversations, it takes the sting out of it. Say, I can't believe you're going. And you can say, it's actually really been helping me.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, the joke isn't so funny because it's working for me. You can believe what it is that you believe. It's not your job to force people to agree with you. But if it's doing something for you, then it doesn't matter what people want to say to try and criticize.
And what are some things to think about when you are dating for a therapist? In the search for a therapist, how should you know this is a fit? Because there's some times you're going in maybe in a state where you are so maybe broken and maybe it just hits you 6 months in like, hang on, this is not a fit, you know? So at the beginning, do you think there are things we should be looking at to really decide whether, okay, this particular therapist, we're definitely a fit, or I need to keep looking for someone else?
I'd say comfort is really high up there. You have to be with somebody who you feel comfortable sharing these things with. And obviously, you could have problems with opening up and sharing. But if they're doing their job correctly, then they provide the environment where you'd feel more comfortable than you usually do. And you'd feel safe. So you need to feel safe in those kind of sessions because you are going to get into sensitive topics and things which feel dangerous to you or really, really painful to you, but there are presence that's there. And also ask questions. That's the beauty of it. You're in the room and some people think, okay, I'm the client. And it's like, if you have a question, ask how they practice, who they see, what they do. I am never angry at any questions because I'm like, ask me a million things if it is going to answer. The thing about it is you're the expert on you. So I guess as therapists or psychologists, we might be the expert in psychology. But when a person comes in, the majority of the information comes from the individual. And so you're the one who's giving it to them. And it's one of those aspects for the more you give, the more they can help. But if you get to the place where you feel like you're not being helped, you can be transparent about the fact that I don't think this is happening and see what they have to say. It's not about being secretive. And as a therapist, I'll say, I can't help everybody. So there might be some people who aren't comfortable with me. It doesn't mean I'm a bad therapist, but maybe there's somebody else who would fit better. But I'm not supposed to take that personal. If anything, it's like, okay, here are some referrals. There's people who, if you're looking for somebody a bit different, maybe somebody older, maybe you'd be more comfortable seeing a woman, that kind of stuff, then you facilitate somebody on their journey to finding what they need as opposed to taking offense. So I'd say when, I guess, dating around for one, take ownership of the process. Don't think that you're somebody who it's happening to, being like, the therapy's for me. I am here because I am seeking help. And so be proactive. And if discomfort comes up, don't keep that to yourself. And my hope is that the person who you're with has the temperament to be like, you know what? That's perfectly fine. So how can I help? Because helping somebody doesn't always mean that you have to be the one in the therapy room. But if it's a network of them understanding what it is that you might need, they can still help you with that.
Yeah, I like that because, yeah, you may go in thinking, I don't know psychology. There's no expertise I'm bringing here, but you are the main expert in your experience and in your feelings.
Nobody knows more.
I hope this episode gave you insights that can help you on your healing journey. Remember to send in your questions via our question form. There's a link to it in the show notes. And if you want to book a one-on-one therapy session with Aldo, we've put his contacts in the show notes as well as his social media platforms, because he shares a lot of gems when it comes to giving you knowledge that can help you on your healing journey. That's all for this episode. If you have a question to ask a therapist, please drop it in our question form. A link to it is in the show notes. Catch you next week for the next episode of Ask a Therapist.